Hello friends, so here we are doing the full moon in Leo video. The full moon in Leo is in a little over 12 hours. So it's going to happen soon enough. And really, for all intents and purposes, the last few videos that I have done are really talking about this full moon in Leo. So this is going to feel a little bit like a summary of some of the themes that have been brought up in the last few videos. In fairness, as I always say, you can really sort of start to feel the full moon 48 to 72 hours before the full moon. The full moon for me, Pacific time, is at around 9:36 or something, 9:54 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday morning. So that, 48 hours makes it Tuesday morning, 72 hours makes it Monday morning. Really, from whatever I have been able to see, we've been feeling the full moon energy gather a certain amount of momentum since Monday morning, since Monday. And so those of you who've been watching the channel know the last couple of videos I did and know that you'll recognize some of the themes that are coming up in this video. But let's do it through the lens of this particular full moon. There are two or three things that are relatively basic, but might be new to some folks, so let me cover those straight away. The moon enters Leo, about 10 odd hours before the full moon happens. The full moon is happening at about 5 degrees of Leo. And so the moon, as I do this, and for a lot of this week so far, the moon has been in Cancer. And the last full moon that we had was also in the sign of Cancer at the end of December. So it may feel thematically a little bit, as we're heading to this full moon, like we are dealing with an echo of some sort that goes back to that last full moon in Cancer, that feels like it is reminiscent of that last week in December, heading to about December 26th, 27th, 26th, I think is when that full moon was. So, and I find that when the moon, the moon transits every house in our chart, every sign and every house in our chart about 2.5 days. Sometimes it's a couple of days, sometimes it's a little bit longer. So every 2.5 odd days. And so I find that we feel the intensity of matters related to that house as part of this kind of lunar 28-day cycle that keeps happening based on the size of the moon. So we are not going to feel sort of, depending on where Cancer, the sign of Cancer sits in your chart, what house it occupies, and what that house stands for, and how the full moon in Cancer that occurred on December 26th, 27th, kind of what was happening at that time. We're not going to feel it with the same intensity, with the same whammy as a full moon, but the moon is still large in terms of what is visible to us. So it's going to feel like we're heading towards a full moon in terms of intensity. Of course, in a few hours, the moon will enter Leo, and it's going to be pretty large in Leo. So not only are we going to have the full moon, but for the 2.5 odd days that the moon will be in Leo, we'll continue to experience a certain amount of matters related to the Leo sign. The house occupied by the sign of Leo in our chart with a certain amount of intensity. And I'm going to expand on that in this video. Now, once the full moon moves from Leo to Virgo, know that in, a little over a month's time, in about a month's time, actually, at this point in time, we're going to have the full moon in Virgo. That full moon is going to be opposite Saturn. So it's going to have a different feel, and it'll be undeniably opposite Saturn. And so yeah. The second of the three things, the relatively mundane things I wanted to point out about this full moon, is that this particular full moon in Leo really corresponds to and talks to the new moon in Aquarius that we're going to have 2 weeks from now on February 8th or 9th, whenever that is. New moons and full moons correspond to each other. Sometimes we'll have a new moon before the corresponding full moon. So if we were having the new moon Aquarius before the full moon, it kind of, for our minds, it's kind of a more linear kind of concept. We have the new moon, which 2 weeks later has a corresponding full moon and back. Right now, the full moons are occurring first. So we have the full moon in Leo, followed 2 weeks later by the new moon in Aquarius. I'm going to let you draw the conclusions as time goes on and we head to that new moon in Aquarius. And as I say that, I realize they have some stuff to share in this particular video as we go on that's going to talk to this with regard to what the correlation is between what it is that is culminating at the time of this full moon that then allows for a new beginning, what is reaching a certain amount of intensity, and intensity of activity, and intensity of emotion, that then leads to a new beginning with the new moon in Aquarius in a couple of weeks' time. And then finally, sort of the mundane things related to a full moon. Visibility. The disk of the moon is full. There's a spotlight in the Leo part of the chart. It may have felt like a spotlight in the Cancer part of the chart, starting Monday, Tuesday, and thereabouts. But irrespective, a spotlight in the Leo part of the chart. This can, in a positive connotation, mean visibility. It's not an eclipse, so I don't know that the visibility is going to be anything other than transitory. And what I mean by that is it's a visibility that really sticks around for a limited amount of time. So some people might gain a certain amount of visibility. I know my Scorpio rising clients, for example, may have something related to career or the career part of their chart that gets a certain amount of visibility. They might find themselves in the spotlight. It's not a huge permanent thing, but it might be that for about 72 hours since Monday or for another few days after tomorrow, there's a certain amount of visibility, a certain amount of exposure. Offers can come through. Something can come to completion. So those are positive connotations of the full moon. On the more challenging side, trouble sleeping, body issues, feeling the full moon in your body, intensity of emotion, intuitive intensity. With the moon, things are not quite clear, but I came across a quote the other day, and I can't remember who said it, so it's not mine, but I'll repeat the gist of it because I can't remember it verbatim. But it was this thing about when someone says something to you out of anger for some reason, pay attention to it because it's something that they've been meaning to tell you for a long time. And that is a very full moon statement. With the full moon, I always say it's like the cup of milk comes to a boil, or, a pot overflows, or the intensity just kind of reaches this kind of peak, and someone may have a tantrum. It's, full moons are kind of fluidic. The tides are fuller, emotions run high, tears, sometimes injuries, blood, bleeding, not so much injuries as much as sort of blood, bleeding, that kind sort of fluid overflow, an increase in sensuality for some people, the sort of proverbial howling at the moon kind of feeling. Now, intense emotionality, but it could be that sometimes we are throwing a tantrum and feeling the need to establish boundaries. It could be that sometimes others are throwing the tantrum. And whether we're the ones throwing the tantrum, whether we're witnessing a tantrum, or whether we are dealing with a tantrum that is leveled towards us, that is directed towards us, pay attention, because as murky as emotional truths are, they're still truths with a capital T. And whether it is your emotional truth that is bubbling up or someone else's emotional truth that is bubbling up, it may bubble up sometimes with the full moon in a rather unpleasant way or a tantrumy way. That doesn't mean that the relationship with a person needs to be discarded from our lives. What is more important is to pay attention to what is being said and what is suppressed and what is beneath the surface. With the moon, we always talk about things that are buried, that are under the surface, that we are taught to repress. In modern astrology and in a lot of astrology that is practiced, there are only two, I'll use the word planets, that are feminine in nature, the moon and Venus. All the rest, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, are masculine figures. Mercury is a youth, or hermaphroditic if you like, but still leans more on the masculine side. So Venus embodies feminine power within us in a much more, it's a much more embodied energy. And with the moon is really talking to important and essential aspects of the human personality, psyche, buildup that we're taught to repress. Emotions, intuition, emotional knowing, intuitive knowing. Well, the disk of the moon is full, and so the sun illuminates the full disk of the moon. The sun, our truest self, our spirit, illuminates our emotional and intuitive self in a way that may still feel sometimes unclear. You may not intuitively be able to point to exactly what it is going on. It's not a full Mercury. It's not this. It's not what is clear here. It's whatever is roiling that sort of is coming to the surface. And so there's a certain amount of energy exhaustion that we might get to. And then, of course, there are all the sort of corresponding physical things that go along with it as well. In addition, we had the new moon in Capricorn 2 weeks ago. We're still, even though this full moon corresponds to the new moon in Aquarius, and it is absolutely fine, and it would not surprise me at all if you can see the correlation between what's going on at the time of this full moon with the new moon in Aquarius, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. We're still in the new moon, the month of Capricorn in terms of the moon, and the word month is derived from the word moon. So however you choose to create your months, and there are lots of different ways in which to think about a month, I think of us as being in the month of Capricorn. We had the new moon 2 weeks ago. Energy starts off as sort of a pinpoint and then expands at the time of the full moon. As I like to say, the wave that started with the new moon crashes to the shore, and then, of course, it starts to pull back. 2 weeks later, we're going to have the new moon in Aquarius. Now, as I've mentioned to you in, I think, my last couple of videos, the days coming up the next week or so after the full moon are an ideal time to be productive. The energy is more balanced. As we head to the full moon, the energy can become a little unwieldy. And indeed, you might be trying to be productive. You could either find yourself extraordinarily busy, depending on which part of the chart this falls in. You could find yourself exhausted and desperately needing rest, for example, if you're Virgo rising and this full moon falls in your 12th house. But the bottom line is that the energies as you head towards a full moon are unbalanced. They're hard to master. It's like that wave that is crashing to the shore. And then after the full moon, for about 6-7 days, is an ideal time to get things done and to get things moving and rolling. And the very last video that I did, last couple of videos that I did, would have explained to you, and I'll say it again, that we are meant to be in action during this time. We're meant to be in action during this time. And indeed, there are important transits that are encoded as part of this full moon and that are also coming up over the next week that indeed continue to come up. Shall we talk about the correlation between this full moon and the Aquarius new moon? Let's do it now. This is as good a time as any. The new moon in Aquarius occurs just after the sun and the moon square Uranus in Taurus. That's the new moon in Aquarius. I have no idea what that beeping is. I don't know if you guys can hear it. But it is, of course, it's competing for my sort of mental, when you do something like this, as I've said, these videos, you go into this kind of space that is very focused and very concentrated. So any noise, anything becomes very expanded. So hopefully it'll stop at some time. I mean, someone somewhere is having a full moon moment. Let's get back on track. The new moon in Aquarius occurs just after the moon and the sun square Uranus in Taurus, Uranus being one of the rulers of Aquarius. Just after. As I've mentioned to you, and the videos, all the videos that I've done since the video I did, and including the video on new moon and Capricorn, are all very relevant for what I am talking about. Now, I'm not suggesting you spend hours looking at all those videos, being the person who constantly says don't spend all your time looking at YouTube astrology videos. So any videos, be in action, be in action, be in action, so that the transits can meet you and deliver for you. But at the same time, there's information that I've been sharing that is all related and building since that time. And it should, because we are part of that month. The personal planets, at this point in time, even Venus has moved into Capricorn as of yesterday or day before yesterday, as of the 23rd. And so we've got Venus, Mercury, Mars in Capricorn right now. We've got the Sun and Pluto in Aquarius. From Capricorn and Aquarius, as I've explained before, and this is the part of the reading that's going to feel like, oh, he talks about this all the time over the past 10 days, but it's important. It's what this full moon is about. From these signs, from the sign of Capricorn, the personal planets that I just outlined, as they transit through Capricorn, and the Sun has already transited through Capricorn, we've already had this new moon in Capricorn, that trined Uranus, or that occurred just after the trine to Uranus. The planets that are transiting Capricorn square Chiron and the North Node in Aries, and trine Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. I'm going to keep this brief because we've talked about this a lot. The planets, as they move into Aquarius, square Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. The signs of Aries and Taurus are where we are meant to lean into and experience a sense of growth and adventure. In Aries, we've got the North Node, where we are meant to grow and experience a sense of calling and are going to experience our desire, our calling. Where do we go? Where do we expand? What do we learn? Always pursue the North Node in a grounded manner, or it will kind of whip you around, and especially mess with your financial security, because that's what the North Node is about. The pursuit of dreams and the hero's journey means that you take on this kind of spiritual quest of calling, but you have to be very, very careful that your practical and earthly needs are being taken care of during that time, or the North Node will do a number on you. It will, hero's journey archetypally mean you might be sleeping on footpaths and slaying dragons, and all of that is fun to read about, but not really all that fun to experience. That said, the North Node calling is undeniable. Undeniable. Chiron is in Aries, trying to heal something that goes back to childhood. Where does Aries sit in your chart? What house does it occupy? That is where you are being called. In the Taurus part of your chart, we just had eclipses, North Node eclipses in the Taurus part of the chart till the end of October 2023. So we were leaning into the Taurus part of the chart for much of 22 and 23. Now, till May, we've got Jupiter that is creating a new, ending a 12-13-year cycle, starting a 12-13-year cycle. If you are on the right track in the Taurus part of the chart, it is going to seek to expand you, move you to the next level. If you are on the wrong path in the Taurus part of the chart, it's going to seek to create an ending and give you the opportunity to take that new beginning. Up to you whether you take it or not. And Uranus in Taurus is going to seek to find you a path that is true and find expression, is going to make you authentic in the Taurus part of your chart. Where do these houses sit? Aries and Taurus, that's where the growth is. Great. Said this before, saying it again, because I don't know if this is the first of my videos that you're seeing. The planets, as they move through Capricorn, are in conversation with the Aries and the Taurus transiting planets. Once they move into Aquarius, they're in conversation with the Taurus planets, Jupiter and Uranus. At present, at the time of this full moon, we have planetary configurations and aspects that I will touch on in a second that are absolutely very much in conversation with the planets in Aries, Chiron and the North Node, and Jupiter and Uranus. As we head past the week after the full moon, which also happens to be, this is my last video, the week before and after, 2 months before the next lunar eclipse. So it could very much be that some of the activities that we are seeing and dealing with the week before and after the 24th of January have an eclipsy feeling. And the eclipses that we're referring to are the North Node eclipses in Aries and the South Node eclipses in Libra. It's the South Node eclipse in Libra that is especially potent because we're in that eclipse cycle right now. If you need more elaboration on what I'm talking about, take a look at my last video, which was about why the week before and after January 24th are important and may have an eclipsy feel to it, may be causing significant change. Sort of earth-shaking, groundbreaking. With eclipses, I always say, if you're thinking about a 19th century novel that has, 13 books and each book has 25 chapters, if a full moon is a chapter, for example, an eclipse is a book. So it is a significant movement, significant change, significant ground-shaking change sometimes. A lot of these transits that I'm referring to that come from the Capricorn part of the chart are starting to come from the Aquarius part of the chart to the Aries and Taurus part of the chart. A lot of them are occurring week before, week after the 24th, as you head towards the 31st of January. There are also important transits, most significantly Venus trining Uranus, that continue into the first week of February. And then as you head towards the new moon, you have the Sun and the moon just before the new moon trining Uranus. This is all a way to say that it all supports what I have said to you since the new moon in Capricorn, which was around Jan 11th. Since Jan 11th, our new year has started. If you want to think of 2024 as a new year, that is how you define your new year, may as well. And since then, this first month, this January, as we head towards the new moon in Aquarius, very important to be in action and pursue goals, because we have a lot of transits that are dynamic and supportive and asking us to do so. The new moon in Aquarius will continue this trend, but by the time we get to the full moon in Virgo, a month from today, roughly, we're going to have to start to pay a lot more attention to handling the crisis in the Pisces part of the chart that has been active since 2014, 15, 16. What you do now and what you do till the end of February, what you do now in capital letters with neon lights shining, and what you continue to do for another month will allow you to start to move in a desired direction and support the Aries and Taurus part of the chart in a relatively unsullied way. Because by the time, if you have that in place, then what you are starting to handle increasingly in the sign of Pisces for the rest of the year will be to help move you in that direction. So as I keep saying, very important for you to be in touch with your goals and take the necessary action you need to in order to follow the sense of calling and heal the Aries part of your chart, and to help create the new beginning that Jupiter is trying to create by May in the Taurus part of the chart, and assist Uranus in making you more authentic in that part of the chart. Okay? So when we talk about this full moon being in relationship with the Aquarius new moon, all these transits that I'm going to touch on in a second, and that continue, it's like a complete cycle of a certain set of conversations that the personal planets, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, have been having with Chiron, the North Node, Jupiter, and Uranus in Aries and Taurus. And all of this feeds into that new moon in Aquarius, because just before that new moon in Aquarius, we close out the cycle by the Sun and the Moon trining Uranus and then forming the new moon in Aquarius. And whatever's coming around this time in the full moon of Leo is directly going to affect what that new beginning in the Aquarius part of the chart is going to be. Okay, now let's talk about the full moon and the aspects that it is making. The full moon in and of itself squares Jupiter in Taurus. We just talked about Jupiter in Taurus ending a 12-13 year cycle, starting a 12-13 year cycle in Taurus. Quite simply, when a square occurs, both the Sun and the Moon, the Sun in Aquarius and the Moon in Leo, need to be in some sort of action, but particularly the full moon in Leo needs to be in some sort of action to allow Jupiter to continue its work in Taurus. So on the one hand, this is why I say that as we head towards a full moon, the energies become unwieldy. Because on the one hand, we're still dealing with, because the moon is in Cancer and pretty large, dealing with echoes that go back to the end of December in a full moony way. Then we're going to be dealing shortly with the full moon in Leo, full moony. So not only do we have to deal with the full moon energies of our emotional and our intuitive aspects being triggered, lit up, hopefully for some of us, some of the visibility and some of the offers that might be coming and some of the completion is positive. For others, have you guys seen the Rider-Waite Tarot card of the moon, where all the animals and the wolf and the lobster are just like, it's like the full moon and it's just like, and that's kind of, it's sort of as your emotional and intuitive truths kind of flare up. As exciting as full moons can be for some of us, they can also be emotionally distressing. But while we're dealing with all this, we've also got this full moon squaring Jupiter, which seems to be saying, yeah, you're dealing with the full moony part of your psyche and you're having an emotional and intuitive meltdown, but at the same time, don't forget to be in action from the Leo and Aquarius part of the chart, so that the Taurus part of the chart can continue to experience its ending and new beginning of a 12-13-year cycle. An auspicious ending and beginning, even if it doesn't feel auspicious. What I mean by that is, if you're going to get laid off in the Taurus part of the chart, if it's sitting in the 10th house or the 6th house or something like that, then as distressing as that might be, Jupiter might be trying to align you with the right path for you and create a beginning. And with Jupiter, it is a beginning. In conventional Western astrology today, when Jupiter transits a house, we're likely to say that you're going to make $1 million and you become the CEO and you're going to get the Oscar and you're going to get the Nobel Prize. I see Jupiter creating a beginning, a drop of water that is then going to turn into the Nile or the Ganges or the Amazon. But we're talking about the drop of water that is going to turn into a trickle, and from a trickle into a little stream, from a stream to a brook. It's a 12-13-year cycle. A lucky break, either spiraling you up into the next rung if you're on the right track in the Taurus part of your chart, or trying to move you in the right direction. Remember, with all these expansive planets, Jupiter, Uranus, the North Node, to remain grounded and to keep an eye on your financial security. What is it that you need in order to feel secure while you explore these gorgeous avenues, the carrot at the end of the stick that the Aries and the Taurus part of the chart are now encouraging you to move towards? Because as soon as in a month's time, your energies are going to have to be diverted in making sure that the messier part of your life does not sabotage these beginnings and can be brought in line with it. And by the messier part of the chart, I mean the Pisces part of the chart. So we have a full moon squaring Jupiter. At the same time, we have two conjunctions that we have to look at. So the full moon in itself is making this one aspect as far as I'm concerned. Some astrologers feel that the full moon is also opposite Pluto, and they're not entirely wrong. So you've got Pluto in the very, very start of Aquarius. You've got the sun at about 5 degrees, and you've got the moon at about 5 degrees. I tend to be a little bit OCD insofar as if an aspect is over 5 degrees, I just ignore it. But Pluto is just a little over 5 degrees, and so you can't completely. And 2 videos ago, I did a video on Pluto and the sun walking into the sign of Aquarius hand in hand, so you can take a look at that. An intuitive awareness. Then, if we factor Pluto in, remember, the sun is going to be squaring Jupiter for real, for good, in a couple of days. There's something about the sun in Aquarius having just conjuncted Pluto and moving away from it, and Pluto just entering Aquarius, where, as I've said, the Aquarius part of the chart, our chart, is ready for a transformation that's going to occur over the next 20 years that is going to be for our highest good. Referencing the video I did 2 days ago. I'm going to place a link to, you know what, at the end of this video, once I'm done processing it, there'll be a link to the New Moon in Capricorn video, and there'll be a link to the last 2 videos that I did. The one about the week before and after the eclipse and the Sun and Pluto moving into Aquarius. So the full moon, not only are you dealing with the intensity of the full moon emotions, not only is the full moon pointing to the fact that the Sun in Aquarius and the moon in Leo need to be in action to assist Jupiter in completing its task. Some action needs to be taken. They need to move so that Jupiter can continue its work in the Taurus part of the chart. But the full moon is also intuitively aware that with these actions, it is serving Pluto in the transformation that Pluto is starting to make in the Aquarius part of our chart. That is the full moon in and of itself. The moon is, of course, ruled by the Sun, which is in Aquarius, very much actively part of this conversation. The full moon chart is disposited by Neptune in Pisces, and there's a conversation between Venus, Uranus, and Saturn as well. The Sun is in Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, which is in Pisces, ruled by Neptune. So Neptune is one of the dispositors. Neptune is its own sign. Aquarius is also ruled by Uranus, which is in Taurus, ruled by Venus, which is in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, which is in Pisces, ruled by Neptune, but also ruled by Jupiter, which is in Taurus. So we have this one dispositor is Neptune in Pisces. The other dispositor of this chart is this ricocheting, handoff, dependency, conversation between Jupiter in Taurus, Venus in Capricorn, and Saturn in Pisces. Both the planets in Pisces, Saturn and Neptune, are dispositing this chart. So somewhere, whatever's going on is going to ultimately serve, be made to serve. As I've mentioned to you before, the Pisces part of the chart, the Capricorn part of the chart has a certain amount of importance this year with all these personal planets. The Aquarius part of the chart is more normal. The Pisces part of the chart, the Aries part of the chart, maybe the Taurus part of the chart is what they're going to have a fair amount of importance. The Pisces part of the chart, as I've said to you, as we head later this year and then next year, is going to become more and more important in a way that we really need, because there's that crisis in the Pisces part of the chart really does need to be addressed. At the same time, we've also got Venus in Capricorn and Jupiter in Taurus dispositing this chart. And guess what? Venus in Capricorn is trining Jupiter in Taurus. So something that Venus is doing in the Capricorn part of the chart is supporting, again, Jupiter, helping to create this new 12-13 year cycle and a 12-13 year cycle in Taurus. So 2 of the dispositors of the 4 dispositors in this chart are very much in conversation with each other. Now, there are 2 conjunctions occurring at around the time of this full moon that cannot be ignored. A few days from now, Mercury and Mars are going to conjunct in the Capricorn part of the chart. And by the middle of February, Chiron and the North Node will conjunct in Aries. Remember, these are all planets in the earlier part of this video I addressed and talked about. Mercury and Mars will already have squared Chiron by the time the full moon occurs. Mars squares Chiron today, I think. But for all intents and purposes, as far as this full moon is concerned, Mercury and Mars squaring Chiron and the North Node and trining Uranus in Taurus. So, as far as this full moon is concerned, in terms of the aspects that it is encoding, the full moon itself squares Jupiter in Taurus. Venus in Capricorn trines Jupiter in Taurus. Mercury and Mars in Capricorn trine Uranus in Taurus. Mercury and Mars in Capricorn square the North Node and Chiron in Aries. Some of these transits are going to be complete in the week following the full moon. This is why I have said the week before and at this full moon, the week before, since the Capricorn new moon, time to be in action. When planets are trining, there's ease and support, but you still have to act to take advantage of what is the most harmonious aspect that we are given. Venus trining Jupiter, gorgeous. Mercury and Mars conjunct, trining Uranus from the Capricorn part of the chart. Amazing. The trines from the Capricorn part of the chart and the Taurus part of the chart are so alive right now and continue to be alive for a few more days. With Mars and Mercury squaring the North Node and Chiron, it just means that, again, whatever action Mercury and Mars are going to be taking in the Capricorn part of the chart, that action needs to be taken to allow you to move towards the Aries part of the chart and to heal the Aries part of the chart. All the aspects that we have been talking about in the past few videos, everything that I've said in this video, outlining that the growth is in the Aries and the Taurus part of the chart, that the personal planets moving through the Capricorn and the Aquarius part of the chart are in conversation with these planets, particularly with the planets in Taurus. The full moon itself is talking to Jupiter. Venus itself is talking to Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter just gone direct about a month ago, less than a month ago. A couple of these planets talking to specifically Mars and Mercury, talking to Chiron and the North Node that are getting ready to meet. The Sun itself squaring Jupiter in conversation with Jupiter. What more do I say with regard to the fact that the week before, and we're having this full moon occur and all these transits occur the 2 months before a lunar eclipse. And I've told you, I don't know why, but the week before and after, 2 months before a lunar eclipse, the 24th of January, that would be, because the lunar eclipse is on the 24th of March. Are important and absolutely can feel eclipsy. Some people might feel that eclipse now. Mercury conjunct Mars has happened 3 times recently because Mercury was retrograde around Mars. October 29th in Scorpio, December 27th in Sagittarius, January 27th in a few days in Capricorn. When planets conjunct, and we're going to be having a lot of planets getting ready to conjunct Pluto, and that, of course, is going to scare everybody. Now, I'm starting to get into content related to a separate video, and I should stop so I don't confuse you. But what happens when 2 planets meet? And why should we always assume the worst? Yes, Mercury conjunct Mars, there might be a need to be careful about hot-tempered communication. There may be boundaries that need to be set. There may well be boundaries that need to be set. But there may also need to be action towards communications taken care of related to the pursuit of goals. Venus in Capricorn. Think about it. The 3 planets that are transiting Capricorn are in conversation with either Jupiter in Taurus or Uranus in Taurus. I'm going to stop. That's what's going on with this full moon. Everything that I've been talking about related to this full moon. And as I said, Venus, after this trine, for the next week, a lot of the emphasis is going to be, I'm trying to see if I've missed anything. I don't think I have. We're at 40-minute mark. You're still with me. God bless you all. Mars squared Chiron today. Full moon occurs for me. Actually, Mars squares, before the full moon occurs. That's on the 25th for me. On the 26th, the Sun squares Jupiter. Mercury squares Chiron. The 27th, Mercury conjuncts Mars. The 28th, Venus trines Jupiter. Mercury trines Uranus. Mercury squares the North Node. The 29th, Mars trines Uranus. Mars squares the North Node. Listen. Those are the dates, but the dates are not, you're not going to experience the transit on the date. The transits are happening and they're alive. They're all within that 5-degree range of occurring at this point in time. That's all I'm going to say. What I will say about the fact that these transits continue till 129 is that till January 31st continues to be important to be in action. In fact, you might find it a little easier to get past the full moon because the energies are just going to be balanced. You're not going to be dragged between full moony emotional and intuitive meltdown and a need to take action and, you know, just kind of all that kind of stuff. February 7th, Venus trines Uranus. And as I said, that's February 7th. February 8th or 9th or thereabouts, when we have that new moon in Aquarius, just before that, the sun will trine Uranus, the square Uranus. So, if I was to summarize this in a sentence, 2024 has begun. What are you feeling called to do related to the Aries and Taurus part of the chart? What can you do about it from the Capricorn and the Aquarius part of the chart, and for this full moon from the Leo part of the chart? I've been naming videos, take action and get back on the horse and Happy New Year for the past, since the Capricorn New Year. You can see my last few videos. They all have this message. And all I can do is re-emphasize it. And if you're at a point where you're feeling like, oh, I've missed the boat. Oh my God, the full moon is happening. Oh, all these transits. The transits continue to happen, my dears. So if you haven't been able to make enough action so far, I have just told you, I have just said, it'll surprise me actually, that if you have not. But I have just said that the best time, in some ways the most balanced time to take action, will be after the full moon. But I don't want you to wait for days after the full moon, just, you know, tomorrow. All right, I'm going to go ahead and post and process this. I hope you found it useful. If you found it useful, share it with friends, tell people about the channel. Comment, like, please, because if you feel like it, because it gives the video circulation. Welcome to all new members. Thank you for everyone who supports the channel and leaves comments. I'm so grateful. If you are interested in inquiring about rates for reading, my email address is going to be in the description box below, so you can use that to get in touch with me, and I can get you that information. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already, and click on the bell icon next to the subscribe, the wiggly bell on top, and that way you'll be notified whenever I do new videos. You'll have an energized full moon, of course. But also try and have a peaceful and reflective full moon, and be patient with yourself, because the full moon is in the early parts of your Leo, and because for many of us, we will have today, yesterday, the day before, really felt that Cancer full moon from about a month ago, because the moon is transiting Cancer and it's getting fuller and fuller. Just be patient with yourself if you're also dealing with this kind of echo feeling that goes back about a month. Okay? Thank you very much. I'll be in touch soon.